Hi, my name's Nitin Palmer, and I'm a learning technologist at the University of Bath. I'm going to be facilitating this session this morning with AlexBuechner and Tim Hunt. Excuse me. So we'll get underway. Can I introduce AlexBuechner from Synergy Learning? He's going to be talking on course, chat and match, creating a Moodle course as a game. Alex.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. Spending a lot of my time with Moodle administration, as you probably know, and at some stage I thought I want to do something different, and that's when this came along. Really the idea was when Moodle 2 came along, and I thought, you know, what are the new features, looking through all those in detail. And one that obviously was the most obvious and one of the key ones was conditional activities. So really what I tried to do was to say, can we take concepts like conditional activities and other features and create a course in Moodle that would have sort of the rough elements of what you could declare as an educational game. Obviously, I didn't expect that, you know, I would come up with something like, I don't know, Angry Birds or something. Or we're still restricted within Moodle. So really, this talk is about conditional activities, course completion, progress tracking. It's not about games at all. I just thought I'd give it a good title. No, it is. So the idea is really, how can we use those concepts, and is it possible to do that? And we will see that some things are quite good and are quite successful, whereas other things which I had planned to do, I just couldn't do. And the objective is really, I didn't want to use any third-party plugins. I didn't want to put in any new code or anything. So the idea is really, let's use the sort of all the onboard facilities we have within Moodle and see what we can do with that. So the first thing I was looking at was, when we have a game, who are the actors in that game? And we really have two types of people. First type of people we have are obviously the players, the people who play the game. And the second type of person, put this in quotes, is when people create games. That's sort of the god, the person who is in charge of the game, the person who can control everything. And for those of you who play games, you very often have this concept of a god mode. Okay? So it took me a while to get to actually enter that into here. So if we look at the concept of that, we would say, well, the players, that's straightforward, that are our students. And for once, for this session only, we declare the teachers as the gods. Okay? But as I said, it's very constrained to this particular concept. The second type of thing we have is that, what else do we have in a game? We usually have stages we have to go through, we have problems we can solve, or the players have to solve. We might have things like items we can collect, and usually we have levels we have to complete. Once I have completed one level, I can move on to the next level. Okay, I think that's sort of the very basic concept of a game. And again, when we look at the counterparts on the Moodle side, we have activities which we could declare as problems people have to solve. We declare the resources as certain items to collect, certain things they have to do in order to get through that level. And we just declare in that context a course as a level, so we can have multiple levels which are multiple courses. Here we just put them in a category. They could technically be across categories or inside just outcome. Okay, so the idea was then sort of looking at what could a structure of a course look like. Okay. Obviously, we, being in God mode, we can see that. The player can't see that. Okay, is that working? So the idea. Here we go. Right, so the idea is really that you start somewhere, you might have a document a student has to read. The idea is, again, that this game is covering a subject. Okay? So obviously it has to be an educational game subject. You might then move on to a forum, and a student has to participate in a forum, which then triggers that they can look at a video. This might be a dead end, but again, the students don't know that, they don't see that, they only see one step appearing at the next. Or they might then have to move on to a quiz. Once they're in the quiz, they have reached a certain level of percentage. They can go on submit an assignment, and so on and so on. There is no real limit in the type of structure you can create doing that. Okay? For those of you who have worked with lessons before, it's actually not that dissimilar. The big difference is that with lessons we are effectively restricted to, well, the type of documents and questions, and also the player can decide, I want to go turn left, I want to turn right, whereas with what we're trying to do is really, we can embed any type of activity, any type of resource, so that adds really far more complexity to it. Okay? So let's see what a course like this could look like. Unfortunately, that screen resolution keeps switching to 800, 600, so we're restricted to this. So I'm now logged in as a student, sorry, as a player. And what I can see initially is very, very little. I have my usual forum, and I'm starting here. And my course is about, sorry, my game is about conditional activities, just to keep it all in the family. So I'm logged in as a student, as a player, and initially all I have is, say, a document, and I have a quiz. As a student, all I know, I have to get to the end of that course. I don't know how to get there. I'm not being told how to do that. That's something I have to find out. So first thing, I would obviously do, I would say go to a document. This is just a document from our course. Said, okay, I've read this document. I can then move on, go to the quiz, and attempt the quiz. And as you remember, the quiz is actually further. Here we go. Further down. Okay, I'm not supposed to see that quiz yet, but it's already there. So, just keep switching. And I say I need a password. I don't have this password, so that's something I have to find out what the password is. Then realize, well, one thing I have for those of you, and I'll come to conditional activities in a second. One thing I can do, and that's a really nice thing in conditional activities, is I can decide, I can specify myself that yes, I've done it. Okay, so this concept of the activity is completed. It can either be decided by Moodle that you have reached a certain level within that. Say, for instance, in a forum you have participated in the forum, or in a quiz you have reached 80%. But also you can specify that the learner or the player can decide, yes, I've done that. So I'm going to do that here. Once I've done that, you can see Moodle now keeps track of the progress of my course. This now triggers those two forums to appear. Remember the sort of the workflow we had? So those two forums now appear. Going to participate in forum 1, thinking, okay, I'm going to add a new discussion topic, and just type something in here, something in here, so this. And hopefully this is going to trigger the next sort of element in my workflow. In that case, that now triggers that video. What I don't know as a player is that I'm effectively run in a dead end. Okay, I'm not going to see that video, but that's it. Okay? I'm not going to show you that video because I'm not connected to the internet and it needs the internet to be connected. So I still can't continue with the quiz. I'm going to do now, this is a far more useful forum, and that's really what I want the students to participate in. It's a forum about a discussion whether the conditional activities, because they're quite structured, and it gives you sort of this element of structure within the course, whether that really contradicts to this whole philosophy of social constructivism. And I really want the students, or the players, to participate in that forum. And once they have done that, I'm just going to post a dummy reply in here. Hopefully that now triggers something else and so on. So the idea from a learner's perspective is that I can get through a course by passing certain activities, by passing certain stages. So what I have now here, it now tells me, actually the magic key is big. Okay? So I can now go in, and effectively this just goes on and on and on. So the idea is really that you have the ability to create any sort of structure you want. That needs a bit of planning, a bit like the lesson activity. The lesson activity is sort of one activity we usually just don't go and start. Usually get a piece of paper first and draw what's the actual structure. If you decide to use that sort of structure, it's usually where I start with a piece of paper and say, like, what's the workflow, what's sort of the type of structure you want to do. And obviously you can use that in a games context, which we just tried to do here, to show the functionality, but that could be used in any other context as well. So, excuse me. So how does that work? Now, what we have, for those of you who haven't seen the conditional activities in version 2, the way that works is I can specify for every activity, for every resource, certain criteria or prerequisites that have to be fulfilled before somebody is allowed to see that activity. And the types of criteria I can specify is that another activity has been completed, another resource has been completed. It can be that a grade condition, you have to have achieved 60% in a quiz or an assignment, or it could also be a date, start date, end date, and so on. And the interesting part with especially activities is that the criteria that an activity is being completed changes depending on what type of activity it is. Okay, so for instance, in the forum, the criteria for that activity to be completed might be the student has to have contributed 3 posts to a forum, or have to have replied to a post, or have to have started a new discussion. Whereas in an assignment, it might be they have to have submitted their assignment, or the assignment must have been graded. So the criteria, the preconditions for an activity to be completed are effectively context sensitive to that activity. And that makes it very, very powerful. With resources, it's effectively, yes, you have to have looked at the resource, or you can specify for every, whether it's a resource or an activity, of this concept of self-completion. So the learner can we can specify that the learner is allowed to say, yes, I've done it. Okay, which again, quite often is useful. Grade condition we've talked about in the date range. I'm sure that makes sense. So I just want to quickly show you what that looks like from the person who creates the course. So for those of you who haven't seen the conditional activities, when you create a course, things look quite messy. Because what Moodle does, it tells us for every activity and every resource the type of conditions that have to be fulfilled. We saw earlier on, as a learner, I didn't see them. They can be turned on that the learner will see those descriptions as well. In my game context, I didn't want that. Okay? So what we can do, I'm just going to look at one, just show you what it looks like. So turn on editing. And I'm going to take, let's say what do we take? We take the assignment. Yeah, doesn't really matter. So the idea of the assignment is that, if you remember the workflow early on, you can only, if you scroll down, okay, this is all familiar, and this is now what is new. So what we have specified in here is the condition that somebody is allowed to see the assignment. Sorry, yes, the assignment. In that case is the grade, we put down a grade condition, and is the quiz must be at least 80%. I could have equally put down saying another activity must have been completed. Or I could have put down a date range, effectively those 4 criteria I mentioned earlier on. Okay? And the second part of conditional activity is almost like we always have an input and an output. The input is, when is it I'm allowed, or what's the precondition, and if my activity is a precondition for something else, what are those criteria that condition is completed? And they're specified further here, called activity completion. And actually, let me go back to the forum. The forum is probably better to explain. So in a forum, because I have far more options to specify, if I go to the completion, you can see I have quite a number of options I can specify. I can, for instance, specify that a student must have only looked at the forum. I can specify that they have posted 1 discussion, that they have created a discussion. I can specify that they have created 3 discussions, and so on and so on. The reason why, what Moodle does is, as soon as one learner has used that course and fulfilled any of the criteria I've specified, what Moodle does, it locks that activity so that it can't be changed, which makes sense, because if you specify, in order to fulfill that criteria, you have to have posted 1 reply to the forum. If I now change that afterwards, that would cause conflicts. I have the ability to unlock that. It effectively deletes all those completed status criteria. Okay? So that's effectively what the types of tools we have on board with Moodle now, which Moodle calls conditional activities. It's effectively a selective release criteria. Yes? No. Well, what the logging does is, because I specify criteria, as soon as one student has started the course and passed sort of the first stage, and if I would then change the criteria afterwards, what would Moodle do with that student that has already completed something, but then in hindsight, actually now I've changed it's a bit like when you have an assignment or a quiz. Once somebody has submitted something to an assignment, I can change the criteria within that quiz. Okay, so that was effectively sort of the very basics I tried to do in a game. So I was quite happy with that, and I thought, yes, it's still not Angry Birds, but it's just getting there. Okay? Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. Yeah. It's difficult because how do you define that? Because exactly the argument you've just said. If I have a browser open and I open another tab, that tab is open, and effectively there's two types of things that could be used. One is the log file in Moodle where we specify we have a date timestamp. When the next date timestamp is on, we just assume that person has spent that amount of time, and the other one would be the log file of Apache, effectively. So they are really the only sort of timestamps we could use. I think SCORM is quite good with that because SCORM has a built-in time facility. I think with SCORM that's probably your best option to do that. But within Moodle, I think that will cause more trouble than it is worth. Okay, so that was basically the start. So I thought, that's quite good, we have level 1. What we want to do now is level 2. So I thought, should be a problem, because another facility that was introduced in version 2 is something called course completion. Yeah? So when course completion came on the scene first, my understanding was, right, what we had before was, let me start the way around. What we just did was, we had prerequisites from one activity to the next. What we really now want is a prerequisite to enter a course. Okay, so moving that up a level. What we had before is, one prerequisite was you have to be enrolled in a course, or it could be the payment option. Once either of two are fulfilled, you're in a course. I then thought initially, right now we have this concept of course completion. So if I've completed one course, one level, I can move on to the next course. Right? That's what I thought it is, and I think that's what a lot of people still think it actually does, but it doesn't. We have then within the course something called course progression. That's something we just looked at, the little tick boxes we had at the side. There's various things, and I'm going to show you the concept of course completion in a moment. And then we have this stage of course completion, where we have various criteria that have to be fulfilled that a course accounts for as being completed. What the course completion really does is, it's actually, sorry this is red, this is not the best font to use, it's actually a criteria for a course, that the course can be completed. Okay, so what I can specify in Moodle now is saying, if you've completed a prerequisite to complete course number 1 is that you also have completed course number 2. But you can still enroll in course number 1 or 2, even though you haven't completed the other course. You with me? I should. Right, let me show that to you. Okay, so I'm in my course, and I'm not touching this. What's happening, Tim? Oh, here we go. What we have now in a course, we have this concept of course completion. I'm going to show you the course completion functionality first. So we have now something called completion tracking. That's a new functionality in my settings. And in the tracking, again, this is locked at the moment. I'm just going to unlock that so we can see the options. I have one option is that I can say a prerequisite for that course can be completed is that another course is completed. It's a concept we didn't have in Moodle 1.9, that a course, when was a course completed? It's the end of the term or when the teacher said so. But we didn't have that facility in Moodle. We have this concept of self-completion, and we have the option that we can specify what are the activities that have to be successfully completed that are a requirement for the course to be completed. And I can then also specify, do you have to complete all of them or just one of them? Bit of functionality I'm missing there is that I can specify actually 3 out of 5. You know, 5 activities, you have to pick 3 of them. At the moment it's 1 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. I can't do anything in between. But, so I have the ability to specify what are the criteria to complete a course. And I have a few more. Again, I have dates, and I have a grade, and I can also specify once somebody has completed a course, you unenroll that person. So initially, as I mentioned, I thought, this is great, I have now this functionality where I can specify when a course is completed, and when a course is completed, it becomes a prerequisite for another course. That's not how it works. The way it works is another course is a prerequisite for that course that it can be completed. So if you think of a qualification, you might say you have module 1, 2, 3. You have to have all 3 modules have to be completed and then gaining that qualification. But it's not, you have to do module 1 first before you can do module 2, before you can do module 3. So that was a bit of a disappointment, because that was when conditional activities came out what I thought they were, what they aren't. So looking back at that, couldn't really do that. Yes, we can do something different. We can have an enrollment key, but you know, one has an enrollment key, tells all the others, and that's the purpose. So that wasn't too good. The second thing I tried to do then was I thought a game needs a leaderboard, because if I play a game, I want to see where am I, where are the others. Tool we have now in Moodle, which links in with the functionality of conditional activities and course completion, is something called progress tracking. So that again makes sense. If I specify these are the 5 criteria you have to successfully complete, I, as a learner, I want to know how many of those have done, where am I? So, as a learner, that looks something like this. So you can see here we have now a so-called course completion status. And in there it tells me prerequisite completed, in my case, that's another course, 0 out of 1, and activity completed, 0 out of 5. That only updates with the next cron job. That's also something which sometimes causes confusion, because students they successfully participate in the forum, they get a little tick, and it still says 0 out of 5. But the next run runs in 5 minutes, and then it's updating it. So that's something, again, that causes great confusion. So if we wait for a bit, it's fine. So that's what the learner sees. What the teacher sees is the same block, but obviously as a teacher, the teacher can see not just the completion status of one, but of all the learners. So just scroll it up a bit. You see that? So what I have now as a teacher, I can say I have 4, my course 4 students, and I can specify exactly they have all completed those activities, whereas the third one only one has done the quiz, and so on and so on. Okay, so effectively what we have now tools on board to really put more structure in a course, and to specify we have to go to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and we have the ability to monitor exactly in a sort of self-paced learning environment which learner is at what stage. Also bear in mind that heavily contradicts this whole philosophy of social constructivism. Okay, so I mean, what I'm doing here deliberately, like that game, is probably the one end which is very restricted. You have to do that first, then you have to do that, and then you have to do that. Whereas social constructivism is probably the other end of that spectrum. So I think it really depends somewhere in between. What is a healthy mix? So that's quite useful from a teacher's perspective. The information we have is quite useful from a learner perspective. What I couldn't do is create a leaderboard. I thought initially, well, if I give a student the right, because the student can see their own progress, but they can't see the other progress. If I give the students the rights that they can see that, that's of no use either, because then they can see everything that they have to do, and I want to avoid that. Okay? So obviously, that's not the objective of the tool. The tool, the way it is very good. I just thought, you know, if I want to create a game, I want a leaderboard. So, yeah, so from a game perspective, that was disappointing. But from a functionality perspective, you know, it's not supposed to do that. So again, that I didn't really very successful doing that. Now, wanted to have cheats. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Again, this is when we come down back to standard Moodle functionality. There's loads of ways you can do that. You can like hide little hints in a calendar, or you can put in a Word document, or you know, wherever you want in a forum information. And it's just the idea is that, well, students really try to find that, and as part of that, it's becoming part of their learning experience, that they just have to draw for certain information, and as part of that, you know, hopefully they find that information they're looking for, but at the same time, they're also looking, or, you know, learning something they haven't learned. So that's quite straightforward. Again, I'm going to skip that now. Also, really going to go brave here, that I want to have a multiplayer mode, which again is something we're effectively talking about. Collaboration, communication, something Moodle is very good in, and we can just use the tools we had before. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to skip that. The two key parts really were you know, can I have somebody moving on from level 1 to level 2? Yes, I can do that with enrollment keys, but not really with the course completion the way I thought I could do that. And the leaderboard, again, Moodle is not meant to do that, but I thought I'd give it a try. Okay, really just to wrap up, what were the things that were limiting me doing that? I already mentioned one of the shortcomings of the conditional activities was that, or the course completion, I can't specify like 1 out of 5, 5 out of 5, I can't specify 3 out of 5. Another thing I can't do, I can't specify depending on, it's black or white, either a condition's been met or it hasn't been met. I can specify, you have posted, when you've replied or submitted one post to a forum, then do this. But I can't say, well, actually, if you have to write another one, then do something else. Okay? I only have one type of condition I can specify. The second thing which limited me to a degree was that the condition I called cannot be an outcome of an activity. So one thing I really wanted to do is that, for example, I use a choice activity. And I say the options are A, B, and C. If you select A, then do this. If you select B, then do something else. I can't do that. Which again is very difficult to do, but it would be a nice thing, instead of that have the, depending on the outcome of an activity that triggers something else. And really from looking at a game context, you know, there's sort of a bit of a lacking, sort of things like randomness or forks, or a bit of sort of things you really need in the game. But again, Moodle is not supposed to do that. I just thought, see what are the limits I can achieve. So from a gaming perspective, I'm looking at a serious game. Is it educational? Well, it sort of has to be because it's Moodle. You know, it's as good as your course, as your game is, and as good as your learning resources are. Is it engaging? Well, you know, I said it's not Angry Birds really. Fun, well, it depends. And is it addictive? Well, I hope it isn't. Right, okay, the idea was, as I mentioned earlier on, was really to demonstrate the functionality of conditional activities, of progress tracking, and of course completion. We've wrapped it up nicely, and I hope that has been semi-successful. Thank you. Yeah, I just don't like the lesson, because the lesson is such a... I know the lesson is very powerful in what it can do. I think it's a... Yes, you could... Well, again, it comes back to this. You can't use the outcome of a lesson. Well, you could create links from a lesson that branches out, but once you're outside a lesson, how do you get back in? So you lose a little bit of control. Tim?
Alex, you have a lesson where different choices give you a different grade.
Yeah.
And then you have conditional grade.
That's right, yes. Yeah, right. You can see where this is going, right? Very good. Sorry, there was another question. Somebody. That's right, yeah. That's right, yeah. And you can specify different grade ranges as a condition. So you can say specify 40 to 60% do that, 60 to 80% do that. Yes, some when there is a grade attached, that's right, we can do that. Any other activities we can't. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, Davo?
Just so I asked, I know it calls out some of the using problems.
Yeah.
But with my checklist project,
Yeah.
you can use that to get it to tick things off based on conditions.
Yeah.
And so you could specify, I want this to complete when these three exceptions are, then use that to complete.
To feedback, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. And I think also when we start looking at third-party modules, there is like a game module. There are various activities with sort of trying to make courses a bit more fun, engaging. Obviously, we have to make sure that the education side is covered, and with activities like Davo mentioned, that's certainly the case. Okay.
So keep asking questions.
Okay. There's only so much I can bluff. Okay, well, sorry. Yeah. Well, that was supposed to do the multiplayer element, and I had something, but because I've run out of time, the idea was of the, well, I had to sort of rhyme a bit as well, so I put chat in there. No, the idea of the chat element was really to have the sort of multiplayer engagement, that they have to contribute as part of the chat and engage in that, and that again would have been a condition that they kind of moved on. So I skipped that later on because it wasn't really any of the new functionality. We had the chat facility before, so that was just, yeah. And it had rhyme, so that was good. There's only so many activities I had room with.
Come along.
Okay, Tim?
Oh, good. Get it.